Happy Monday, everybody.
Happy
Happy
Monday.
Monday.
Happy Monday, everyone.
So, we have a very, very special guest with us today. Without further ado, I have Dr. Zeine here with us. She's a psychotherapist, author, and all around amazing person, amazing Iranian. And we're just going to pick her brain for the next hour and go from there. I think
Get some insight.
It's going to be good for us. It's going to be good for the audience, especially because we have an Iranian-centric audience, just to, talk about real issues and how we can, try to, I guess, explore those issues and find the root causes. And I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to try to be. I'm going to let the professional that we have on dig into that a lot more. Armagan, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
So welcome, Dr. Foojan.
Hello.
Thank you. It's good to be with you guys.
We have an exciting for me, I know exciting for the rest of us also, episode plan. We have a lot of questions and topics we want to talk to you about, and like Arash said, bring awareness to just the Persian community in specific, but also anybody that's struggling with mental health or depression, anxiety, and just helping them feel comfortable to talk about it and kind of understand it more. But before we get into the hard stuff, we'll just start with our drink of the week. Our noosh of the week that you chose is tea, which I think this is our second time doing chai, but cheers.
Oh, we don't mind. Yeah, we
I don't mind at all.
Favorite part of the...
We're Irani, we love our chai, so we'll have it any time of the day.
I think it's a nice change of pace from margaritas and wines.
I know.
Cheers, everyone.
Our mental health.
Cheers.
So cheers. All right. So I think the first thing we really want to touch on is, what is depression? What is anxiety? What are the symptoms of each? And kind of helping somebody understand, do I have depression? Do I have anxiety? What's going on with me?
Sure. I think depression, when we look at depression, there's a couple of versions of depression. So one of them is more like a chemically induced depression, which we call like major depression. And usually you will have minimum 2 weeks of bouts of crying, feelings of hopelessness, a lot of sadness, sometimes the thought of suicide. In the extreme level, you might even have some psychotic episodes that would be there. And some people also have a lot of irritation, anger, especially teenagers show it more with anger.
Mm-hmm.
One part of mood disorders that has the depression in it is bipolar disorder, which you call like bipolar 1. There's an extreme amount of depression on one cycle, and then another cycle is an extreme mania, which is, talking fast, doing different things, being impulsive, and then at the end of that might be psychosis also. And then there's another one which is called bipolar 2, which is really depressed, and then they come up for air a little bit, and then they have hypomania, which is anger and irritation, and then they go deep in depression. So these are part of the mood disorders that are, but a lot of other people, like this is a group that has a certain percentage, maybe like 2 to 3% of the world will have this, but there's a lot more that are not chemical and they are psychologically induced. Maybe because of the traumas in the childhood, the way they were raised, they had a very, very low self-esteem, and it just never got better. And they have a negative view of life. So they do have the kind of like sadness and hopelessness and a negative view of life and themselves. And that also causes a depression. I call it more like a chronic depression, which kind of like it's a low chronic, which is almost like part of your life. It's called dysthymia, but it's like, it's always there. Like everything is always gloomy. Mm-hmm. Which that psychotherapy really, really works with that. Psychotherapy works with all of them in a particular way, but really the last one that I said really just gets treatment by psychotherapists and is not necessarily with medical management. Mm-hmm. Medical management doesn't really, like medical management, getting medication changes the chemistry of your body, but doesn't give you skills, doesn't change your belief systems, which right. For the chronic depression, you really need to change.
It's almost like a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Like a temporary fix.
A Band-Aid.
Yeah. Yes. Now, anxiety is a different ballgame. Anxiety is in the anxiety disorders. And that is more like a what if Like there's a heart palpitation that you get sweats, you can't breathe very good. So it's more of the thought process of what if something negative shows up, and you have the worst case scenario in your head, and you don't even finish the worst case scenario. You're like right at the edge of the worst case scenario all the time, right there.
Yeah.
And you create this kind of like the horror movie for yourself, and you put it up there, and you're constantly living in the future of the horror that you've created. Now, if you create that state for yourself, your body, when you get anxiety, pours in a lot of chemicals for the sympathetic response to come and start protecting you, because you've created some, illusionary danger. So your body
like a flight or fight response.
Exactly. So it starts with that, and it creates that for you. But then can you imagine if you're always put yourself in that scenario? Because in reality, you go through this, and then there are times of calmness because you're done with it. But if you're constantly creating this in your body doesn't go through calmness. So what it does, it gets over flooded. And that's why sometimes you get the anxiety attack. And then at the extreme level, it becomes a panic attack where you actually think you're dying. So your body goes through some symptoms of, your throat gets really sore, and then you think like you're going to choke at any minute. You can't breathe anymore. So the panic attack is usually the fear of actually dying, which is going to follow you.
So the first level is anxiety, and then it goes into a panic if it doesn't.
Right. It's called generalized anxiety disorder. And then if you get completely flooded and move forward with it, then definitely gets into a panic attack. And anxiety is underneath a lot of other disorders, such as eating disorders, addictions, post-traumatic stress disorders. There's like
we could probably go 3 hours on just talking about the cause of anxiety. And
it's a very underlying issue, and I feel like a lot of people's lives.
We're not doing any justice talking about it for however long we talk about it for.
And I think one thing you were saying, like panic attacks, you get the sore throat and just like the clogging up. I think what a lot of people also don't know about anxiety attacks is that a lot of physical issues that you're having with your body, you see people going to the doctor. Even I myself would do that. Sometimes I'd have a sore throat for a week or headaches for weeks, and my stomach would hurt all the time. And I would go to the doctor, and every time they were like, oh, it's just anxiety. You're overthinking things. You can't sleep at night. You can't eat well, don't have an appetite because of these anxiety attacks. And I think that's something also important that you mentioned. People understand that things that happen to you physically are an effect of the anxiety attacks and panic attacks.
I think everyone has a sensitivity somewhere in their body. So obviously when you have that type of your body is on an alert way, then where you are in your body is sensitive, it shows up. Like somebody's sensitive in their stomach, so it usually shows up there. If they get the headache, or they get tension all over here, or backache. Like for some reason, most of the people who have a lot of economic issues or money issues, it goes in their lower back. So people hold their anxieties in different parts of their body. The same way with anger, like some people show it in their jaws. It gets clenched, or their shoulders gets really, really hard. So you can see where the body is a psychosomatic concept, where emotions are in your body. That's where you actually have them. Thoughts are not in your body. Thoughts are electrical pulses that are get created in your brain, but emotions actually get created in your body. So you're feeling it within your body, and the chemicals that are pouring with each one of these emotions. That's why you get them in different types of distress in your body.
Okay.
So Dr. Zeine, would it be a fair question to say, is anxiety even real? Because if it's a what if that you're self-inducing it yourself, is it real? If it's theoretical, you're thinking about the worst situations, could you, if it's not an emotion and it's just thoughts in your head?
Well, it is real in particular ways. I mean, it was set up in our system as a human being in order to protect us, in order to predict, because we wanted to protect ourselves, right? So a lot of us living in a jungle, we had to predict, we had to watch, We had to know and predict to see where the lion will come or where the danger would be. So it's set up for a right system. But like any other system, if it's not working on a regulated basis and it gets irregulated, so if it's misfiring, for example, you might go somewhere and it's important for you to be able to watch for predators and see if there is one or not. And that would be the part of the anxiety that is watching for you, or the part of the anxiety that you might want to do an impulsive act, and your anxiety supports you to look beyond that impulsive act. What if this happens? I better watch myself and not do that, right? So it really has an important function for us as a human being. Where it goes off is that it goes beyond what it's needed. So you have anxieties that are also existential, such as everybody goes through them. Anxiety about being alone. We are a herd, we can't be alone. So everybody has that. Everybody has an anxiety about death. It's something real.
Yeah.
It will show up one day.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has anxiety about responsibility and how much can they do that. As we grow in different ages and, like the young adulthood, everybody has. What is the next level of my going from a child to an adult? And what does it mean for me to have responsibility, to get married, have children? Like, these are responsibilities that are coming. And anxieties for these are really real because they're the next level. But you are right that some of them are unreal because we use the system now in a delusional way. And that's where we can support in finding, is it real? Like, is there anything I can do for this? I need to listen to this emotion and really find out how I can keep myself safe, protect myself, do what is the next thing that I need to do? Or is it that I'm just creating a delusional future that I need to just take away and not think about it at all? And that's where the assessment shows up. As the anxiety comes up, then you start, creating the assessment. The same feeling like you would have if you're actually going very, very fast and you have anxiety and you have the fear of maybe I'll get into an accident, and that anxiety can support you to calm you down. But then you have the same anxiety in your system when you go to Magic Mountain and are having a roller coaster, right? But then in some level you think, this is safe, this is fun, this is play. Nothing's going to happen and I'm going to be
What's
down.
the worst that could happen here?
Touching on the anxiety again, the nervousness, right? So a lot of people will just look at somebody who's nervous all the time and just be like, oh, she's just a nervous wreck, she's just paranoid all the time. So how can someone distinguish between just being nervous all the time versus actually being diagnosed with anxiety and needing to get help for it, right? Because someone can just be nervous all the time in a fast moving car, or nervous that they won't pass their test, or nervous that they won't get that job, always being nervous. But what's the how do you distinguish between nervousness and actual anxiety?
They're both the same. There's no distinction between them. They're both anxiety. So there's an anxiety, what we call a generalized anxiety is an anxiety that it shows up, but it's not necessarily attached to anything. The rest of them would be like a fear. When you actually have a fear of, I'm going to fail my test, that's an actual fear. The essence of it is the same. Anxiety is a fear that is not attached to a particular thing. It's just kind of like generalized. It's all over. But what happens in your body is similar. It's very similar function that happens in your body. So if somebody is just overall always nervous, that means they're always anxious about something. That they're on the edge. Another thing that happens with anxiety is if you're agitated all the time or angry all the time, but then you're trying to hold yourself back. If you're holding yourself back, then anxiety shows up because there's always a fear of, I'm going to blast. So the next question you had was, how do we distinguish between them and know what to do with them, is to first look at what is the thought process that creates this anxiety. Is it real or is it not? Let's do a reality check with it. Could this possibly happen? And for me to be in a danger zone, or something bad is going to happen. And if I do the reality check and it's yes, this is going to happen, there's going to be something bad happen, then I can, from the present moment, do a different action in order not to create the worst possible scenario. Or if I look at it and it's like, well, no, this is not happening right now. The chances of happening it is slim. Or I'll get there, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I can do right now? It's like 11 o'clock at night and I need to sleep, and all of these thoughts are coming. It's like, is there anything I can do about it right now? And if in your head you're like, no, they're like, okay, then I'll think about it again tomorrow, because obviously there's nothing I can do about it right now. Let me calm myself and, go to sleep.
And that's why I always tell people, just control what you can control. Worry about the things that you have control. And if can you do anything about it now? Just like you said, no, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Going. I want to go back to depression for one question. I know Arta had a question about that too. Just like you were saying, depression kind of starts with that 2-week period of the crying and the sadness and all, but a lot of people just, have bad things happen to them in their life, and maybe they're falling into this depressive episode or depressive kind of hole. So some people might brush it off and say, oh, it's just a period of my life, right? And then that period in their life keeps going and going and going, and then they exactly right, and then they realize, oh, okay, maybe it's not a period of time. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I'm sad all the time. So what are tips to help someone kind of understand they're going into that depressive hole? I like to call it the hole because that's how I think of it. But what are some tips for someone to kind of understand, hey, I might be going to this hole, and how do they kind of pick themselves back up again? How do they get themselves out of it, like dig out of it?
The way that depression is different than sadness and anger. Sadness and anger are states of their feelings. Depression is a state. And the way we get from sadness and anger, or even anxiety, into depression is because we take something that is happening right now and we make a decision about it, about ourselves or the world, and then we generalize it and maximize it and stamp it. Mm-hmm. Now, life looks like this, and that's how you get to be a state. That's not the truth. The truth isn't the same way we said anxiety is creating this horror story about the future. Depression is almost like a horror story we create about who we are, about the past, and the hopelessness of it, that is always going to be that way. And that's how you get stuck in that hole that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So how to handle it is, again, look at the thought process and look at how much falsely we've put it like an always, never, mm-hmm. This type of a thing. You could hear your own voice where it stamps it and kind of like generalize it. And if we take it off of that space and say, okay, this scenario, I lost a mate. Somebody no longer wanted to be with me. I lost somebody to death. Somebody died, and I got to go through my grief. I lost a job, so these are the loss concepts. I lost the fantasy. I hoped that this was going to happen and it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So anything that you could look at, where is it that, or maybe I could think about like, I'm incapable, like I create this kind of a negative belief system about myself. I'm incapable of doing this. I'll never get anywhere. I'm no good. So these are the labels you actually attach to yourself and then generalize it all over the place. That's how usually people get stuck in that. The way to do it is to look at the thought process, open it up from this type of always, never, this is the way it is, and look at the situations and see what is the grief that situation actually needs. What is it that you needed to do? What type of a lesson you needed to get from that situation to add to you as you move toward life? And I usually just even say, like, if the belief system is I'm no good, I'm never going to get there, I go actually to specific things which past week. What are all the things you were capable of? What is it you've done? Because you go into this state of all bad. So I kind of sneak in some of the good based on reality. I even ask people, can you please email like 5 or 6, 10 people and say for them to tell you what they like about you or what they think about the situation that is positive. So you could hear from other people and not get stuck just in that zone.
Right. Positive affirmations.
Yes.
From others.
Affirmations are a little bit more like
Little tidbits you tell yourself.
Yeah. So affirmations are one of those things that is very tricky because people just don't believe it, because it's almost like you pick some word and attach it to yourself. Almost like fake it till you make it, like you attach it to yourself so it raises you. And it works for many people. On a very depressed people, the affirmation by itself doesn't work. So what I suggest is actually reality. Like, I want you to look at let's go through the day, and instead of only look at the bad stuff, let's look at also the good stuff that you were responsible for, or what has happened for you, you know? So then we can pick from reality and pick it up. And if they like it, if they still come up, there's nothing good about me. And I would say, well, then what would your best friend say? I don't know. Well, their best friend because of you had some value to them. Like, why would they even want to be your friend? So we pick all of those little pieces so they can get in reality that somebody loves them out there and they got good quality, and maybe they can hear those from themselves and then raise themselves up. Or there's a situation that they think they're incapable of. And it's like, okay, let's again do reality check. Were you capable of doing anything in your life? Yes. Well, we'll go systematically. And then it's like, well, you might not have skills in this one and you expect too much of yourself. So let's ask 10 other people around you. How would they, what type of skills they had creating this? Maybe you need to learn this skill versus just, assigning yourself that you're not capable. So finding what the belief system is at that moment that they've generalized and kind of like stamped it to themselves, and then challenging those belief systems with reality that is in front of them.
And I think as society, we have to help each other out. It goes back to our guest from last week where he said, my challenge for you is to do one random act of kindness for somebody. And a random act of kindness doesn't need to be you bought a homeless person lunch, even though that's a great thing to do. It makes their day. But you could just pick up a friend that you think is going through, pick up a phone and call a friend that you think is going through something and just say hello.
Yeah, just saying what.
I think sometimes depression, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's just sometimes just someone needs a phone call and to make sure that people know that I exist.
Yes.
Right.
There's
somebody out there thinking about you.
I'm not just flying under the radar here between all these people that I know. I have 1,000 social media friends, but not one person calls me.
Yeah.
So I think that's just as society, we need to help each other out for these types of things. And I think I was talking to Mata this week, and she had something about depression that she wanted to ask.
Sometimes I feel like, especially during this pandemic and being, here where we're still, at least me, I'm still at home, social distancing. And I think ever since the pandemic started, I used to have a very busy, constantly like doing things back and forth. And now I'm not really someone who likes being confined to like four corners. And I either catch myself like starting off the week, like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I have a list, like it's going to be a great week. I'm going to be very like motivated, and sometimes I'll do it. And then as soon as I slip up a little bit, I slip up a lot. And I'll sometimes like catch myself doing it, but I don't really have like the tips to tell myself, like as you were saying before, to say like, it's okay. You don't need to hit rock bottom to start all over again. I feel like there's a big, like taboo around that you have to hit rock bottom to, start all over again.
And there's never a rock bottom. I don't think there's ever.
Yeah.
I think rock bottom is different for different people.
Right.
Yeah.
But one of the things I heard from you is that a lot of us have is all or nothing thinking, which is if it's either all or it's nothing, or either I have to do everything perfect all day if I put it in a calendar, or if I miss one, then the whole day is ruined. Like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that I have, So that kind of a all or nothing thinking puts a lot of pressure, because in reality, it's never an all or nothing concept. So it's more like if you have it on your schedule that, if you miss one, then you're like, okay, got it, missed it. All right,
tomorrow.
Let's go back to the next one that I have on the schedule. I think one of the things that happens also that creates depression, sometimes we have a very punitive mind, where if we miss a little bit or do something, then, this Godzilla person comes in here and then punishes us and tells us how bad we are and all of that. That usually has gotten created with the combination of the voice of our mother or father or teacher, a combination of that voice. And then, we add it to it in ourselves. And sometimes we're just very harsh to ourselves. And it's pointless. Like, I get it that we want to discipline ourselves in that way. But hello, like, that type of a disciplining doesn't work for us. Being harsh to ourselves doesn't work for us. So it's monitoring that voice and seeing if you can soften it up a bit. And that's what we do as a therapist. We soften up. The person comes in, was like, I'm bad, I'm this, I'm that. And we're like, it's okay. Like, it really is. It's okay that you are this way. Let's just look at your behaviors and which ones you're choosing to do. And the ones that are working for you and others around you, let's cut it out. And let's come up with other ways of behaving, which works for you and others. The punitive way of being with yourself is the one that damages. Because when you're not punitive, you kind of like move along with life as it comes along, and you assess and do the right thing with the information you have at that moment. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn from it. You're going to get up again, use that information and mosey along again. And you're going to make a mistake again. And this is going to happen. And it will never be a day that you will never make a mistake. That day will never show up. So might as well get used to your own mistakes.
Yeah.
It's good to look at those mistakes as just experience for next time you go about it. It doesn't have to be a negative connotation. You can make something positive out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So Dr. Foojan, there's a lot of representation of therapy within media. I understand therapy and was okay with going to therapy after watching The Sopranos, because I there's a lot of acclaim that was very close to what therapy is, psychotherapy. Would you agree with that interaction that those two characters had was authentic?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
There's a lot of shows that are showing up with authentic therapy right now. Yes.
And that show started 20 years ago. So it was kind of ahead of its time. And I recommend to my colleagues here that if you don't even want to watch The Sopranos, as great as it is, at least watch some of the therapy scenes, because it's fascinating. And that's what made that show work. It wasn't just a typical, mob show.
There are other shows right now. I think there's a show which is very close. It's called Treatment, and it has episodes, half an hour episodes. And I just saw another one which is called Couples Therapy, and it was with couples, and she's right on too. So thank God there's a lot of good shows that are representative of good therapy.
And that kind of ties into what I want to talk about with Iranian culture and the negative presence.
The stigma that mental health doesn't exist.
Just if you go to therapy, you're insane. You're crazy. You just need to be locked away in an insane asylum.
Yeah.
An embarrassment to the family.
Yeah, what are we going to tell our friends?
What are you telling this therapist? You're giving them all our family business.
Yeah.
What's so I didn't hug you enough? Why are you telling a stranger that?
Go eat some more fruit. You'll be better.
Yeah, go have a chai and you'll be
Drink a glass of
fine.
water. You'll be
Yeah.
okay. Or why are we like this?
Yeah, it's not just us. It's not just us. Mental health has
I know.
stigma in a lot of places. Part of it has to do with the concept of psychotherapy is a Western world concept. It was never an Eastern world concept. Right. And you see the same stigma in, Japanese culture, Chinese culture, Eastern culture.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that was the case was because when the organ, like a lot of other places in your body, when it's at disease, you have the capacity to think and make right decisions for yourself. Usually with mental illnesses, the organ that is the decision maker is the one that is in disease. So it makes wrong decisions or bad decisions, or it creates problems for themselves or others, or it even refuses treatment. So that was one of them. Plus that usually people who would actually go to treatment of psychiatry and they would go into mental hospitals, they were really non-functional at that moment. That's why they were. So they would become a non-functional part of the society, which had to do with the organ in their mind, an organ in their body that was the decision maker. So you couldn't really rely on them anymore. So that's
you were your own judge and jury, basically.
Yeah. So it changed with the Western world of psychotherapy, which came with psychoanalysis, obviously from Freud and then Jung, and then, just took off with the modern ones, the postmodern ones. That was more, it wasn't just that you had to be non-functional. it had to be giving you skills, looking at releasing traumas. And you had high functioning people, because they used to go to psychoanalysis 3 to 4 times a week for an hour or two, and charging a lot of money. So these were not non-functioning people. These were people with high status in businesses who were going. Mm-hmm. So you that shifted from that to no, this was for daily life. That you go in, you have this space of clear listening, which crisp and clear listening. It's only about you. It's not about the other person, the therapist's opinions, or what they like or what they don't like and how it should be, or they give you new advice from where they think life should be. It's more of, this is for you, this is an hour for you, and a reflection, like a mirror in front of you, of who you are, what you do, what you think, how you feel, what you're doing, and how it's affecting your life, and then giving you skills that you maybe did not get in your as you were growing up. So that is a shift. Now, is the Iranian culture, who are in United States, are more apt to be able to uphold this? Yeah, because I think that we've started within the past almost 20 years. I've been in media myself around 18 years. So I know that we've been trying to, in the Persian community, to share and give them ideas about what all of these concepts are. So it's made it easier for them to come. They might still not share it with their friends that they're coming, but there's a lot more of the population that are coming to gain the help just for mundane concepts of life. Like, how do I go from one phase of life to another? How do I go through life? How do I do before I get married, let's meet somebody and really look at if the two of us are compatible, right? Before they have children, some people are doing proactive therapy and counseling right now, which is fantastic. But they're all going. I've even heard, to be honest with you, in Iran, that going to therapy has gotten much better, and there's a higher amount of people who are actually going to therapy. The style of therapy which is happening in Iran is a little bit more medical model, which is giving you advice versus all the other treatments that are happening.
Listening.
Yeah. But I know in the United States, a lot more Iranians are going into therapy, which is, I think it has to do with all the radio and television therapy sessions psychoeducation sessions that a lot of people have done in radio and television.
Well, to piggyback off of that, sometimes someone just needs to go to therapy, and maybe not even go to a psychotherapist, just a therapist, and just vent. That's all you need sometimes. Just someone that because of HIPAA, is not going to go and say your business to somebody else. I think someone, and going back to talking about functioning people with high pressure jobs, there was another show that I watched called Billions. This is a small part of the show, but it's basically a hedge fund company, and they have all these day traders, and they have an in-house psychotherapist.
Oh, wow.
That everybody has to, mandatory, you have to go see this person once a week, but you can also go anytime you like, if available. So it's in-house. She had her own office and everything, and then they would just go in whenever they're having a bad day or whenever life got tough or whatever the case was. So that's actually, I think if that's really happening, it's amazing that's happening, because those are high pressure jobs. So I think those guys are making millions and billions of dollars, but we need more access to it, on the lower end of middle class and the lower middle class and all that stuff, because I think that's where the real pressure is coming this way.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ash, because, if you aren't feeling well physically, or you have the flu or cold, you can call in to your office or job and call out for the day. Your boss understands, okay, you have a back problem or you have the cold.
Nobody understands I need a mental health day.
But you can't call in and be like, well, I just I'm not feeling the best, and I just need a day to reset my mental health and do some things for myself. They'll be like, we don't care. We need you in. There's that stigma still on a national level that that's not being addressed as a serious problem, just physically, and you know, if you have a sickness.
And I think even to like Persian parents, right? We have these like weekly gatherings and stuff pre-corona, the mehmoonies and the parties. If they're like, get up, let's go to this so-and-so's house, you're like, you know, I don't really feel like it being around all these people and dressing up and dancing and putting on a happy face. They're like, get up, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just tired. Just, you know, have a coffee, let's go. But if you said,
Right.
oh, you know, I sprained my ankle, my back hurts. Oh my God, rest. We'll stay home with you, you know? So it's still...
I have to study.
If you have to study, exactly, it's still part of the culture like that. But I'm happy that you're saying the past 20 years, you know, there's more awareness to it. But I don't know if anyone has a question. I have a question on
Go ahead, and I have a follow-up after you.
So you were saying that when, you know, some people come talk to you or Persians come talk, they realize there's some skills that they didn't learn while they were growing up, you know, to help ease this anxiety or depression or anything they're feeling. So I've heard you talk about entitlement and just, you know, giving your kids...
Persians entitled?
Yeah, I know. This is like, it's going to be a long-winded question, but you know, this, you were saying like, give your kids jobs. If they can hold a spoon, tell them to hold the spoon, or tell them to clean their rooms and their bathroom. So, you know, in Persian culture, or I'll use my parents as an example, I feel like we're very spoiled in a sense. We're spoiled with love because our parents always want to give us that love and, you know, affirmations and you're the best, you're the prettiest, you're this, you're that, or that, you know, the sayings of like Persian sons and their moms, or their moms are always doting on them and all. So, or even with material things, always having the nicest things and all that. Do you think this creates a sense of entitlement, and how does this affect their mental health when they grow up and go into society and reality and realize, oh, I really have to work hard for this stuff that was given to me, or, oh, you know, no one's going to be as nice as my parents were and as loving as they were to me in my job, in society, in relationships. Like, I have flaws, I need to work on that. Like, what do you think about that? It's a long question.
I was talking to one of my clients this morning, and it was interesting because she was talking about, and she's a physician, but she was coming from this village in Iran with, there were 8 kids. And her husband also comes from another village or another suburb, that their household were 9 kids. And she was saying that they were talking, and they said when they were kids, they had to actually take care of the other kids, and they had to all come in the kitchen. They all each had to do something. And I said, it's interesting, with almost like just one generation actually, we've shifted from the children are part of the family, which each one of them has to take part of the, you know, and help everybody and get everything ready, and everybody had a chore and all of that, to coming to a place of all we want you to do is to focus on studying. Everything else will be done for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's what happens. Like the person thinks that that I only have one responsibility and I have no other responsibility to do. Well, there's a lot of time. So if that time then goes to having pleasure. So you have a lot of hours for pleasure and no hours for responsibility. So then, you know, a person grows up, and the reality of outside does not hold you up high when you do not take care of responsibility.
Right.
So your first job, you're going to go and you're going to have a rude awakening, because you are going to be responsible for certain things, and people aren't just going to give it to you with a silver spoon. And you're going to be reprimanded, and you're going to give, you know, get negative comments about what you need to do, and consequences for it. So if there are really no consequences at home, and you're not training your children for the outside world, well, the outside world is not going to be as kind to you. So you're going to be unpleasantly surprised, and you're going to be shocked when you go there. So therefore I ask, and usually what happens is, at the time of teenagehood and young adulthood, because the responsibility was never given, at that time, there's this harshness that shows up from the, you know, teenager or the young adult, which requests for something or demands for things, coerce for things. And when they see it, they hear a no from their parents finally, then they get enraged, because obviously if you've given something to somebody and then suddenly you say no and you take it, that now they think it's unfair that you took it away. So they think they have the right to rage at it. And if you are in the same group of parents, which they treat their children the same, then you're like, why don't you do it? Because my friends' parents do it for them. They're the one who are getting them the BMWs and the, Mercedeses and this and that and the Cartier Banglets and da 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 da. So why the hell can't I have it? So I'm not good enough in front of them, or what's wrong with me? That's where there's a disharmony with a reality that they have to actually face when they go out. That's where my suggestion had to be like, your job as a parent is to do things for your children when they're not capable of doing it on a mental level or a physical level. So the minute that their developmental stage gives them the ability to do it, your job is to teach them and then let them do it. Mm-hmm. And let them do it so they can learn. And that's how people gain self-confidence and self-esteem, because they do things, they got the skills, and anywhere you put them, they know how to do it then. And the first things comes from home, the chores at home, the responsibilities at home, and then the responsibilities of the society and forward.
I think in one of your videos, you said one of the first jobs you should give your kids is to clean their bathroom.
Yeah.
Or, their bedroom.
Yep.
And then when they're adults, they know how to clean the bathroom, but still get a cleaning lady.
Like Arash.
Whatever.
I think it's a different choice, though. I think it's different to know that I can do it.
Right.
But I'm better suited. I can make more money at this time. My time can be spent doing this task, while then I hire someone who are great at doing this. Now I've created two things. One, I'm utilizing my time more productive. I'm also creating job for another person, but that's a choice that I'm creating on a higher level.
Yeah, you can live with that if you actually know how to do what you're paying someone that task is.
Right.
And then going back to your other point about being basically coddled all your life, it's a participation trophy culture.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't win per se, you still get a good job, great effort. But when you get into the real world, like especially in a world like sales, for example, there's no good job or good effort. You're just as good as your last sale. And that's it. That's all it is. So my question now is, you deal mostly with families, and is it mostly couples that you work with?
I work with individuals, individuals, a lot of business owners, and couples and families. I used to see a lot of teens. I don't see teens anymore, but young adults.
Okay.
So my question is when someone is coming to therapy or is thinking about coming to therapy, how do you, and they have the cultural stigma about it, how do you overcome that with them? Or basically, how do you sell them on therapy, to make a long question short?
When somebody comes in, usually they have one issue that they need to handle that they don't know how to handle. So I start first with giving them some skills. I listen to look at what is it that how did they get here, and what is the problem at this point. I usually give them some tools, like simple tools in how to assess and how to handle the situation that they have. And then on the side, I look at all the other areas that they have maybe conflict with, or they don't feel happy and fulfilled with. Because to me, the purpose of therapy is for you to create a fulfilling life for yourself. And when you know how and then in my model, I created a model, awareness integration model, which I brought the things that I've learned for 30 years from cognitive behavioral, the emotional theories, the behavioral theories, the psychosomatic theories, and brought them together. I really am interested in looking at what are your belief systems and how you think. And I watch and listen to you in how you think, and then how do you feel and how do you behave. And those components, if you start looking at like inside, which is thought and emotion, the way you act, which is coming out of you, and then the impact, the result that you create. If I can create a camera on you where you can monitor with no punitive commentary, just monitoring and assessing at all times in what is it that I want? What is it that I intend? What kind of result I want to create? And is my thought process and emotions and behavior up to par to creating that result I want? And shoot, if it doesn't, which part of this do I need to shift? Which part don't know and I got to go learn? Life becomes a flow, and then you're consistently moving forward without the excess time of you being punitive to yourself, putting yourself down and going through a lot of hurdles and sitting in unnecessary emotions. So life becomes efficient for you, and you're going to be able to move forward and create that kind of like a happiness and fulfillment, regardless of the situation that gets created. Now, what I mean is not if I lost somebody, it's appropriate emotion for me to go through grief, to sit down, to cry, to go through all of that, but not get stuck in it. If I lose a job, it's important for me to go through the crying and, what happened, but then I'll assess and see, how did I get this place? What is my responsibility? And take myself off of the victimized position and go into a responsible position, because victimized position hurts. So these are the path of looking at, this is what therapy will do for you. This is what I would do for you if you come to therapy, to create kind of like a fulfilling life for you and get the skills. So I want to give you the skills so you're not dependent on me for the rest of your life. I like to see you for the rest of my life, but you don't have to be dependent on me in order to move through your life. I want you to have the skills for yourself. So, you can do it at any point that you're out there.
So
that's what therapy looks like.
So the biggest step for somebody, from what I'm understanding from you, is to actually just get into your office.
The first step is to get to the therapist's office.
Maybe not the biggest step, but the main step is, we have to agree that, okay, we're going to go talk to somebody, or I'm going to go talk to somebody.
Or being at least aware of your current situation.
Yeah, especially for couples. Especially for couples, because relationships are one of those things that if you create a good standing from the beginning, you learn what I say, learn how to fight fair, and don't hit below the belt.
Never.
And know how you can resolve conversations and differences, which are always going to be different with somebody else from the beginning. Then your relationship stands on a solid ground and moves forward. But if this thing creates a mess, it kills love. Like it does. Like I've watched most beautiful romances get to the dirtiest place through years, and it's just sad because they didn't have the skills. So I really recommend it for couples, especially even before marriage, or and then sometimes you don't know the skills. You just say, obviously this one was bad and that one was bad, and I can tell you all the list of why this one and that one was bad. But if you never learn the skill, you'll switch these people, but you're never going to be fulfilled and, kind of like either find the love you want or keep the love you want, actually.
Now, sometimes you're not there to sugarcoat anything for anybody,
No.
Right? So
I'm
when
brutal, pretty much. I'm really brutal with reality.
Yeah.
So do you sometimes look at a couple and say, this isn't going to work?
Yeah, I've done that.
Done
Some of them got really pissed at me, but
right.
I've had people where I've said that to, and one of them came 10 years later and said, thank God you said that. I know I was pissed at you at that time, but I look at, far away. Or some of them, I told them they shouldn't be together. They did. They got children and they got divorced, and one of them came back and said, you told me not to do this, but I had to do it. And it's like, well, yeah, we do. But the only times I actually say that, to be honest with you, is when you see that a natural way of being of these two brings the worst of the other person out.
Mm-hmm. Just being next to them makes you angry,
Yeah. It's like there's some sexual chemistry that's there that brought them together, but right beyond the sexual chemistry, like anything that this other person does just irritates the hell out of the other person.
They get to a level of anger that they didn't know they had.
Exactly. Right. And with those, I'm like, hello. Like, yeah, you can learn so many ways of controlling yourself, but why? Like, you want to live 50 years with a person which just irritates the hell out of you when they breathe?
That's supposed to happen when you're older and you're 60.
That gives me anxiety, making a lifelong decision when you're in your 20s, or for me now, my 30s, making this decision of this is the rest of my life. Supposedly. So
especially with the Iranian pressure of when are you getting married? When are you getting married? Especially when you get in your 30s, right?
I've been hearing that since I was 22.
I know.
I gotta tell you something about the Persian weddings, by the way. I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not. Isn't it the way that we have it in our family, that we know exactly what type of a mate we want, what type of in-laws we want, what type of a house we want, we know what type of kids we want, we even know what our kids are going to be when they grow up. And so we got about 90% of the thing right in our head. We only need 10% to find the other person, and it's done.
Yeah, you know, your kids are going to be doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Yep.
You know,
and then don't we have timelines? Like, we're going to be meeting, and then right at the 3rd month, we got to get serious and maybe even give me the ring. And then right at the, a year mark, we got to do this. And then we're going to buy our house at this time. So we got the whole thing timed. And
there's some Louis Vuitton bags involved in there too, somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
and also the expectation of when it has to happen, right? You're like, for a guy, it's like, oh, you're 30, like you need to get married, done. For a girl, it's like,
and they 25. Pressure you.
Yeah, and it's like, life is not just about getting married. Like, I think that's another thing in our culture. Like, there's life before and beyond marriage. Like, everyone needs to live their life, love themselves, and then get into that before jumping into it so fast. I don't know.
I think I was watching something on Instagram, and I don't want to point out which celebrity it was, but basically there was somebody on the program said, first comes money, then comes love. And then immediately, someone who was next to them checked them right there and said, no, money is not important. I mean, it's important, but love needs to come first. Then there's happiness. And if money comes along with it, that's fine. But it has to be just love and happiness.
Because you want to make sure you're with that person, even if hell breaks loose.
Because
it takes a lot of skills. It takes a lot. Yeah. It takes a lot of skills. Love is good. See, you got to see this. Like, if you just want to be with someone sexually, then all that matters for them is to be good in bed.
Right.
If you want to just be with them for a couple of years and do the, sweet romantic thing, all it's good is you got to have good sex and you got to be loving and romantic. If you want to get married with someone, these two are important, but there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be assessed for.
There has to be a personality click.
Personality click, kind of like to be mature at the same age, almost not like emotional maturity of the same kind of age, compatible in decision making. Remember, marriage is you are a partner in every area of life. Every area of life, every decision you've ever going to make, this is going to be a together decision. So that's why there's a lot more skills that are needed, and there's a lot more way of assessing the person if they're the right person for marriage. They might be the right person for your 2 to 3 years of loving, and that's all.
They shouldn't be a source of dependency for anything, happiness, finances. Any of that, especially.
That's why they say high school sweetheart, because it only lasts during high school, and that's it.
I think partly is that there's an interdependency in the marriage. I think everybody has a role. So sometimes, it becomes the role that they want, like the male to work and the female to also work at home or be with the kids, because working at home and being with the kids is almost a 90-hour day for
that's a
full-time and a half. Yeah.
Full-time job that you don't get paid for.
Exactly. So it's not like the dependency is only about should both of them work or not. I think at one point when the person is done with their child rearing, most women want to work and want to do something productive. It depends on whether they already have a career and they put it aside while child rearing, or they continue, and the men just continue with their career. There is an interdependency that happens, and that's why we come to be as a mate and to cooperate together and create a life together. And each person takes one part of this life and they kind of like move together as a team. Right. But they have to have the teamwork.
It has to be one. So, Dr. Foojan, I know you have to go.
Yeah.
We want to tell our fans, our followers, you can look up Dr. Foojan at foojan.com. We'll tag all her socials. Her Instagram is at Dr.Foojan Zeine, and her Twitter handle is at Dr. Zeine. She also has a book out, Life Reset. I ordered it today. So I'm looking forward to reading it. And she also, was it weekly that you're on KMTV, ABC Radio?
Yes, weekly on Mondays.
Weekly on Mondays. So see, Mondays is a good day.
Yeah.
So you have Dr. Foojan, you can listen to Monday, and you can listen to us on Monday too. But listen to Dr. Foojan first. I think you'll get more out of that.
And Dr. Zeine, rest assured that this was for educational purposes and not just a trial run for therapy for ourselves.
I truly enjoyed every conversation, and thank you. It was a joy to be with all of you. Call me anytime, and I'll show up with you guys and have fun again.
Thank you
of course.
so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.